you. Good point. Thanks.
No problem.
Hi, my name is Will Lyons. I'm a member of the Jakarta EE Working Group Steering Committee. And John and I have put together this agenda for today's meeting, John Clingan and I. The purpose of the meeting is to encourage discussion, feedback, contribution on a joint micro-profile and Jakarta EE messaging proposal. So we're not talking in this meeting about technically integrating the two or incorporating the Jakarta namespace and the micro profile or anything of that nature. This is really a marketing and messaging meeting. So what I'd like to do is just to provide some background on this notion of a CN4J alliance, where the joint messaging proposal came from, and then we'll review two documents that embody the proposed joint messaging. And I'm hoping that during the course of the meeting, we can capture topic areas that people agree on, areas that require further discussion, and there may be follow-up actions that people want to volunteer to take as well. So are there any questions at this point before we get started? Okay, so I don't really know how many people are familiar with the notion of the CN4J Alliance. I just want to take just a bit of time to discuss that. So during February, there were two joint meetings of the Jakarta EE and Microprofile Steering Committees where we discussed the notion of an alliance. And both steering committees agreed to creating what we call an alliance for the purposes of educating, marketing, and promoting alignment of Jakarta EE and Microprofile in the marketplace, and providing a forum for debate of technical issues. And that agreement was formed by both steering committees formally endorsing that idea in their meetings. The steering committees also agreed on a process for endorsing joint proposals. And if you look at the meeting minutes, for which there are links in this document, you can see the details of what was discussed in the meetings. But high level, the process is, if there is a proposal that affects both working groups, the recommendation is that a sponsor from each of the communities, one from Jakarta EE and one from Microprofile, jointly put forward a proposal. It gets taken to the steering committees of both groups. And if they both vote to endorse the proposal, then the proposal is endorsed. So that's the basic approach or the basic process we're working in here. And both steering committees also agreed to get this process started by working on some joint messaging materials. And so that's what we're discussing today. Two documents have been drafted. One is the joint messaging document itself, that's a written document, and the other are some initial slides. And the messaging that's included and reflected in them reflects directionally what was agreed to at the steering committee meetings. So the goal is to have a joint messaging document endorsed within a month of the steering committees agreeing to move this forward. That's our goal. So that would say the target date for getting this agreed to is April 9th. So I'm hoping we can work towards that date. All right, any questions about CN4J Alliance or what all is entailed there? John, do you have any other comments on, the Alliance, the process, anything I've left out?
Yeah, I think it was well stated. We want these to continue to be, community and engagements and feedback in these calls. And, just bear in mind that the decision making, is for the respective steering committees, but community feedback is and involvement is super important. So thanks everyone for joining.
Okay.
And on timeline, just, from my perspective, I had imagined that we would have, basically take a month from the time that we started working on it. So we got this meeting scheduled a little late. So probably practically we're looking at more towards the end of April in my perspective, but just because I think it'll take a little bit of time for get approvals from everybody, and but we need to give a little time to do actual creative work. So
Okay. So we don't know how long it's going to take. So
I think
we'll
instead
see
of
what transpires.
I think
Yeah.
my recommendation is I set up the April 12th actually in the Git issue, and that is too short. We started the work in the microprofile side last Monday, and I do believe that from this call we should be nice to add 3 weeks. That will not 3 weeks, 4 weeks, just because the steering committee will take a whole week to vote. That is 7 days, and that means that we have 3 weeks to do the work from now to 3 weeks. That's it. That will be my recommendation to keep us honest.
Okay. So I hear, Amelia, both your comments and David's. The alternative way of looking at it is just in general, we don't want these follow-ups on proposals or ideas to take, to take some indefinite period of time. To be perfectly honest, April 9th, the specific date, I think we do need to make visible forward progress on an ongoing basis so that these little initiatives don't just die on the vine. Yeah. But let's move. Are we good with that?
Yep.
Move on. Okay. Yes. All right. So what I suggest we do is first we start with a joint messaging proposal, and we look at the document itself and attempt to capture areas of agreement, areas requiring further discussion, and follow-up actions. And let's try to allocate about 20 minutes to this, unless anybody has any particular objection to that. Okay, let's go. So where are we? So I believe this is the current version of the document. Am I looking at the right document, Amelia?
Yes, you are looking at this document. Will, thank you so much for asking. This document is a copy, an editable copy of the document that you and David created to help us navigate it. I moved it to the community folder, and everyone in this call, Plaza in the world, has access to change stuff. We're using suggested mode so that we can tackle the stuff openly.
Yeah, I would, my preference would be that we assign a limited number of people as editors of the document.
Yes, and, that's for this call to decide who would be the editors. Yes.
Well, okay, so let's review the content of the document. So this is something that was, the sponsors, by the way, of this joint messaging proposal are myself and David Blevins. And the proposal is that, the Alliance should endorse unified messaging, complementary nature of the technologies, et cetera. These are the high level intentions of the messaging. The goals are listed here. And this is the actual proposed messaging itself in text form. And there is a link to slides we will look at separately. And the rest is just, process stuff. Let's just dive in. So the goals, that the two initiatives or working groups endorse unified messaging, promoting the complementary nature of the technologies. It should hold up over time, though it can be modified. We should have a set of simple slides. We're not looking for, 50 or 60 slide presentation, but, just that assert a unified message and that can be incorporated into standard slide decks. In the future, we may have a white paper or, that discusses this in more detail. At this stage, we're just looking for some high-level messages that give the audience a sense of the alignment between the two projects. David, I think you inserted this stuff. Allows the audience to distinguish between the goals of the two projects and see how they have their unique goals and are complementary. And that proposes that shows them as how representing a combined ecosystem. So the messaging itself is that Jakarta EE and Microprofile represent a powerful combination. They're complementary initiatives of the Eclipse Foundation. They're both standardizing APIs built on Java for enterprise applications. They use a similar specification process. I don't know why this has been deleted. I think it's actually, the fact that they use common governance structures is, I think, a positive. That we have community engagement and collaboration across the initiatives. For example, this meeting, we have vendors supporting both technologies. We have customers using the technologies, and we're providing choices, innovation, investment protection. So I will now open it up for comments. Are there any questions about the purpose of this document or the goal of this document? How about the content? Does the content make sense? Either there is a strange level of unanimity,
Yeah, exactly. I was about to...
or my headset is not working.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Yes.
Mark and I have developed a rapport. The thing is,
I'll second that.
He seconds. That's right. I moved the meeting minutes get approved. He seconds. So.
Yeah. Okay. It's good.
Okay. Thank you.
How about we ask to the people that have not spoken, like we have Dominica. Hey, you're here.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, what is our intention? How do we want to use it? Once we confirm the first version, we get all of the edits sorted. What is the future of this document? Is this something that we are going to leave set in stone? This is what it is. What is the projected life of it? How do we want it to be used, and by whom?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Should be at the end of the proposal.
Well, I think this is your focus of how to use it immediately, correct, David?
Yeah. As well.
Yeah, I'm thinking longer term, maybe.
Right. I think you're talking. I don't think, quite honestly, I don't think we've thought. I am personally so focused on just getting an initial draft.
Yeah. So
but it is a legitimate question.
It's a legitimate question. So, here are my thoughts, Dominica. So I mean, like, I view this document as sort of like the starter of, we can maybe leverage, that we can maybe leverage in other areas, even if we're just taking bits of it. Basically our first attempt to try to create some sort of joint messaging. And so ideally we're kind of laying a little bit of a foundation we can kind of build upon if we want to be able to write a story really quickly about the Alliance, and then not have to go back to the beginning of, hey, does everybody agree with this messaging? So we can kind of have some basis that we can, quote parts of it, clip parts of it out to just, members of the working groups can use it in their things that they write about the Alliance. It just, ideally we can leverage it indirectly in a lot of ways. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does. It does. Yeah, I think obviously it describes the core idea that we need to all stick to, and that's how I see it at the moment. But I just think there's probably going to be room for expanding it beyond what we're going to agree on today, and
absolutely, and
beyond the 12th of April. So I would sort of treat it as a document, as a start, rather than something that is completed after April 12th.
Yeah,
completely
same.
agree. Yeah, there, I would expect there may be a need to update this, on something like a quarterly basis, as new releases come out, perhaps as microprofile consumes certain Jakarta APIs, who knows? So, okay. Other comments? Amelia, you were able to successfully solicit commentary, so.
Yes, so let me push Kenji. Kenji, when we were on the two calls that when we were drafting how to send proposals, you did mention that you wanted to make sure that two different organizations, not Oracle or Oracle Tomitra from Jakarta side, will push this agreement. Do you believe that this proposal is fair to what your concerns?
For now, there is nothing to add to this proposal, but I think it is important to provide this kind of message to the Java community in order to we mean that Jakarta and Microprofile collaboratively develop the microservice or cloud native environment. So I think anyway, it is important to we express this kind of message as soon as possible.
Okay. I'm not hearing much. I'm hearing some endorsement. So unless somebody raises some concern, I'd propose that we move on to the slides themselves. Any reason not to do that?
No, I think that's fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's move on.
Thank you. Okay, so there's also a link in the agenda document to some initial slides that have been created. I took a first pass at this deck and it's been modified with some changes. So what you see, here this slide with just the Jakarta boat has been deleted and replaced with this one. So these are deleted slides here. So the current deck reads microprofile in Jakarta EE. It talks about a brief summary of Jakarta EE and a brief summary of microprofile. It essentially repeats the powerful combination messaging that we just looked at in the messaging document itself. And then it moves to a series of slides, which have yet to be completed, which are intended to illustrate the synergy. So let me say, before anybody comments on this slide, it is known that the API references on the Jakarta E side here are dated and they may need to be replaced. But the concept of these slides is to show on either side the microprofile APIs and the Jakarta E APIs and represent them in a Venn diagram fashion and show where they have their distinct APIs, but also where they overlap. So the area of overlap, which is, in areas like CDI, JSON processing, JSON binding. Forgive me for not using the proper Jakarta API terms, too old-fashioned here. Those areas represent the areas of synergy and how they're working together. That's the concept behind these slides. And the thinking is to have a slide like this, which shows shared APIs, another slide which shows, which would represent on a single slide, microprofile compatible implementations and Jakarta E compatible implementations using a similar, metaphor, what have you. So over here, you'd see the Jakarta E compatible implementations, you'd see the microprofile implementations here, and there would be some implementations which support both. And similar, yes.
Sorry about it. You mean Venn diagrams for the implementation?
Yeah, we can let them get through the whole thing, and then we can go back through and be creative. And
Yep. And then there's this slide that's called tech supporters. I think we need to agree on a noun here, but this might be tech supporters. It might be, what is, John, what is the name for the the corporate sponsors and micro profile
Yeah, it's corporate members.
corporate
Just
members.
yeah.
It might be strategic, in the case of Jakarta E, we might want to talk about strategic members or members of the working group. In any case, the notion is to represent that, there are organizations that are behind these initiatives, and again, show those organizations supporting each initiative and the overlap between them. And that's as far as the slides go. So overall comments on the just the sequence here, and is this representing what's intended with a messaging document?
I think what I've mentioned in the messaging document is that we're using the stronger together sentence, which I really like personally, but it wasn't necessarily mentioned in the messaging document. So maybe that's the one that we could link together. That's the only discrepancy I've or thing missing that I've seen.
Dominica, what page?
Well, I mean, on the the stronger together at the first and the last slide, and I think on the, let me check.
Are you saying is it in the slides?
It's not
themselves?
in the, it wasn't in the messaging document. That's what I mean. So we used it as the key sort of headline thing in the presentation slide, but we don't actually mention it in the messaging.
Good point. Dominica, you're right. When we're talking on the slide 11, instead of saying corporate or strategics, because Jakarta is beyond strategic members, it's a working group. We should add here, Jakarta and Microprofile is stronger together. And instead of stronger together, and then we add the Venn diagram with all the members of both working groups. No distinction whatsoever, and we make it fun. Is that maybe something cool that we could do? Do you think it will measure the stronger together message?
I don't mind. I think the core thing is sort of I think it should be mentioned on both sides if we're saying that quite heavily, focusing on it in the slide deck, but not mentioning in the messaging. It's a little bit that's missing from the messaging. Yeah. That's what I meant.
From my perspective, the sequence should be we agree on the messaging, and the slides should reflect the messaging.
That's right. Yeah.
And personally, the notion of stronger together, that seems to me, it strikes me as mainly oriented towards members of one working group to another. Hey, wouldn't we be stronger together? But to take to the marketplace, stronger together invites me, if I'm a consumer of this, I would say, stronger together than what? That were you separate before? Or,
I had
that's my reaction
concern.
to that. Yes.
I had a related concern in that implementations that support both fully might be favored versus those that implement one or the other in the Venn diagrams. So, the word that kind of I think of is, along the lines of synergy or something like that, right? As opposed to stronger together. I mean, I understand the concept, but it can be interpreted in different ways by different people, and given the history of how we got here, it's a little bit concerning.
I think what we use in the messaging document now is a powerful combination. That may sound a little bit more safe. I don't know.
Yeah, but the combination, I think, is the wrong word. And John, you nailed it too on that side. Combination, Microprofile and Jakarta are not combined. They collaborate with each other. They use each other's technologies. So how can we go back into the document and maybe just rewrite it? Can we do that?
Maybe I think I appreciate everyone's perspectives on the slogan. I think we should come back to that. Can we pin it for just a moment? In terms of how the two relate and what it is we're communicating to people, that is, well, in terms of how the two relate and how there's unique synergy here, I think is something that we really only have on this slide, but maybe could be spelled out a little bit more. It is, one of the things that would help for people to understand is, they are the ways specifically that they're complementary, and maybe there could even be a table of their, goals, that they're different, and how they relate, how they make a stronger whole. Like, for example, on the Jakarta side of the fence, we do cherish and put in high priority backwards compatibility, and it's been the secret of our longevity and the reason that Jakarta EE has lived far beyond many other technologies, and something you just don't get in any other part of the industry. Like Angular, they were breaking their APIs immediately. Everybody's breaking their stuff on a regular basis, and we don't do that on the Jakarta side of the fence, and you can rely on it, and it's safe, right? On the micro profile side of the fence, we have an opposite perspective, which is complementary, in that, that's the place for us to flesh out ideas and be aggressive with technology and try to find what works, right? And together, that means we have all the bases covered, right? And that's something that people should appreciate and understand. And I think calling it out would be great.
Well, actually, David, I think that's overly constraining, because essentially you're saying what you knew from the past is going to be true in the future. So that you're essentially saying that Jakarta will never figure out a good way of deprecating and eliminating stuff that they might want to. And I don't think that will, can I finish?
Yeah.
I think that there are technical ways to address how that might be done in the future. And perhaps we will cherish stability more than innovation. I don't know. But I do think that essentially what you're saying is the new boss is the same as the old boss, right? I don't like that. I don't like those handcuffs.
Yeah, I wasn't referring to deprecation, just simply that that it is not our job in a long living standard to be guessing at technology that is volatile, to be guessing on how to make a standard on top of a technology that's volatile and changing itself in ways that don't allow standardization, right?
So I think the word that we tend to use is stable, right? Degrees of stability of APIs.
Right. So however we communicate it, right?
So wait, John, so you're saying the microprofile is not stable?
At
Well,
times,
in the
it's
sense,
not.
yeah, in the sense that we're more willing to break compatibility, and we have already, right?
Yeah.
We've had multiple
Right.
specs go through major revisions that have broken backwards compatibility. Now, we don't do it willy-nilly, and we don't do it necessarily in
Yeah.
major ways, but relative to Jakarta, we do.
Yeah, but I would say that that's the wrong choice of words then, because stable implies something. I think you're saying, you don't guarantee consistency. Stability is a different problem, right? You want something to be stable.
Don, you're correct. We do say in the
Yeah, that's a fair point.
7 course that say we do not guarantee compatibility, and it's written.
Backwards compatibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Could we discuss, though, as a group? I mean, I don't know why it would be objectionable, because to me, if both groups are first of all, it's all of us on both sides of the fence. It's basically the same people, right? Same community and all that stuff. So strategically, don't we want to focus our aggressive technical agendas in one area, knowing that they can break, and focus our stability plays in another area, so that way we can have just cleaner conversations with customers? If I know,
curious to get
Yeah.
feedback from some of the other folks so far.
Yeah, I mean, what do people think about, that, right? That we just in terms of us being able to have clean conversations with customers, if they're expressing some ability to, some desire to be aggressive and deal with breaking changes because they just really want to get something done to tap into these micro profile technologies, but you understand the risks. There may be some breaking changes, and cool. If they're expressing, I need this to be, long-term thing. This is my priorities are stability. Okay, don't use these over here. Focus on this stuff. That's the safe stuff, right? What do people think about that? I mean, we need some place where we can work on volatile technologies together while not confusing our customers who want stability.
Majid, I am going to throw you under the bus.
I'm really more interested in the vendors in this one.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
So I'll comment. I personally think that this deck as structured goes a long way to saying this is a powerful combination, or these are aligned, or what have you. And when we start to get into discussions which might feel like boxing certain technologies in, those can become controversial, or there may be disagreement, and I don't want to let that disagreement get in the way of getting out a basic document that says these things are working together. They are, this is the relationship among these groups. So that's my feedback, David.
But maybe could you give me a perspective outside the presentation? What is your perspective on? Does that seem like a reasonable way to attack the market, right?
I'm going to give you my holistic view.
Yeah, perfect.
my holistic view is, let's get this messaging document out, and where I sense there's not clear agreement on any particular aspect of it, I'd rather not engage in that. That's my holistic view, David. You may not, that may not be the view you want me to respond with.
Well, I'm looking for everyone's feedback on.
Yeah,
this
no, I
topic,
understand.
right?
I understand. Yeah. You asked vendors, so I.
Yeah, well, it's just
represent
specifically, what do people think? You know what I mean? Like, we're the working groups of both. We have a market that we need to approach. That market is filled with different concerns, right? We have, on one side of the fence, we have like to compete against things like spring technologies that are not standards. They create technologies quickly and abandon them quickly. They break them, and that provides a certain amount of advantage. We have things that are always evolving that we're trying to work into our ecosystem, like none of these things are conflicting with standardization in a lot of regards. Then on the flip side of the fence, we have had a period of time in the early parts of the JCP, for example, when we did aggressively standardize ideas before they were really proven, and we left kind of a graveyard of technologies like JAX-R, the registries, UDDI. I mean, we could, the first version of JAX-R PC, which was immediately subsetted by JAX-WS. We have a lot of dead specs to prove what happens when you are really aggressive, trying to meet the market's immediate demands, but with a standard first, right? So we've kind of developed an ethos of implementation first, right? So, do we want to bet? Is it our spirit that we want both of these brands to basically be the exact same thing, and that they both do all of that, meet aggressive things that are really not ready for standardization yet, but also focus on things that are standards that, that are completely standard and safe, and customers have no real clear way of knowing which one is which? Or do we want to split them up a little bit, just kind of, even if it's finger in the wind, we don't have to treat it as like a cage, but we could at least say to the industry, this is kind of where we're steering. Doesn't it make sense? Over here, we do our aggressive stuff that may not be quite ready for standardization.
No, so David, you asked for vendors' opinions, so
yeah,
fair enough. I think the statement that's made on this page at the moment is reasonable. I certainly don't think it would be helpful at this stage to position one as the place for stability and the other as the place for innovation with the negative consequence that can be associated with innovation, which is that it might be less stable than.
Ian, thank you for speaking first, because I was thinking along those lines. I think that David, you've clearly segregated in your mind how you want to position these, and I don't think everyone, I'm not even talking individuals. I don't even think each of the vendors, as you address them, agrees on what approach they would like to take to innovation. I don't see ourselves at IBM positioning these technologies the way you have.
Right, and that's the feedback I'm looking for, right? Because I don't want to just have this thought, and I'm the only one who has this thought. I'd like to hear from everybody.
Well, you just did hear from me.
I only heard from you. Oracle passed, and
Oracle didn't pass. I do not want to include what you're talking about.
Okay, but I'm not talking about including in the slide deck. I'm just talking about what we're doing together.
I see.
Yeah, but
I'd like to keep this conversation focused on the slide deck.
Right.
I really would like to do that. So, our goal here is to come up with a messaging document and a slide deck that we will use, and we will evolve in the future. I don't want to use it for, broader discussion.
Guys, if we want to send a message to both communities, does it make sense to highlight some differences? At least, I think it's aligned with slide 8. And it might not be only related to specific technologies, but also to approaches. So if there is a difference in the approach, how to innovate, we might highlight this good points of each direction. And some things resonates with me, specifically moving faster. It's much easier if you don't do compatibility. I don't say it's the best approach to do, but just it's reality.
So Rustan, you do agree that we need to note in this document the differences, correct?
Yeah, but at least slight highlight, why there are two technologies exist, and what exactly they try to solve, or in which way, so some highlights of the differences for sure will be helpful for the community to understand which technology better to use. Because, for example, for some people, backward compatibility is very important, and not everybody can invest money to adjust every time. So maybe Jakarta E will be better for that people.
Personally, I think it's a wonderful point. I have added a differentiation between similarities and a new point to say differences, because it will need to be added here. You nailed it on that point.
Yeah, but the only thing I want to highlight, to add, avoid highlighting disadvantages. Let's say, not putting each other against each other. So just highlighting the differences. And it doesn't mean it's one is better than another.
How one can complement the other one, I would say here. What extra things you can get with Jakarta E, for example, or what extra things you can get with microprofile.
Yeah, exactly. Especially that we're talking about synergy. We can't really. This is probably where we want to focus on. Because there are. I agree with previous points. I think from. Can't remember which one of you have said that, but yeah, positioning one as stable and one as innovative, equal unstable in a way is dangerous. It's not the way to go. I'm afraid.
We've got about 15. I'm always time check person, so we have about 15 minutes left, and we can try and nail this down now. I just didn't know if there were other things to discuss as well.
Yeah, I guess. So I think there's one question about bringing out the distinction. There's an open question about bringing out the distinction between the technologies and how to do that. And there's some concern around that distinction being innovative versus stable, let's say.
Not stable, guys. It's not about stability. So sorry, but let's not use stability because it's very dangerous word. Like if you say
no.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm saying there's concern about that. Yeah. But I think with respect, is there controversy around any of the other bullets? And my thinking had been that we would actually have, as it currently stands, we're planning slides for vendors supporting both technologies. I'm not aware that we've got anything related to customers using both technologies. Anyway, the only follow-on slides that are identified at this point are these three. I think we could probably do something on the fact that a similar spec process is being used. Does anybody believe there would be value in adding that?
So.
Yeah, I think anything that shows how those two work well together would be beneficial. And I think just to, sorry, I'm going back to the previous point, but
yes.
Both MicroProfile and Jakarta have their own websites and their own messaging separately. And if community members want to find out what's in it for me, all of that is out there. I think the key aim of this document, of this presentation, is to show how they both can work together. So I'm sort of doubting, I'm not sure about whether we need to highlight differences. I think my understanding is that the key point of this is let's show how these are cooperating, so synergy, cooperation, powerful combination, however we want to call it. I think it's about how they work well together.
Okay.
I will just say that it will come back that if we don't talk about something, it gets so large because we're so afraid to not discuss it. I believe that we're more powerful when we drop the shield and say, these are the difference. And we are much more powerful because we are diverse. And that is a wonderful message to say it in the first proposal out. Every single time that I see anyone evade such a discussion, it makes me cringe and it's scary because if we, the creators, the implementers, cannot own the differentiation, then what is the deal with owning and saying, hey, we want to do this alliance so that we can stop this miscommunication of saying that MicroProfile and Jakarta compete. So I ask everyone, especially those of you who have not spoken, what are your stands? And it doesn't matter if you're not a vendor. We have a few contributors that are independent in this call. And you are out, you are not an outsider and you are important. What are your thoughts on this topic?
So I haven't said anything yet. I'll just jump in and say, for this deck, I think we want to show how the Alliance is a good thing. We don't want to be painting any fences in it. And we don't want to be saying, we don't want to have anything in here that's going to say one might have some advantage over another. That stuff's going to come out. That if people don't already have an opinion on that, it will come out, and there will be work together that we will be undergoing. So I think a lot of the, a lot of this, I'll call it dirty laundry. I think, I'm not sure we need to have that in this deck. Right? We certainly need to discuss it. Absolutely. I just don't think it needs to be in this deck. My opinion.
Maybe this is something as a follow-up from here. I don't know where those documents will live eventually. I don't think there will be a website for it, but normally, you've got microprofile website, I've got Jakarta website, and all the messaging for each is there. If we need to then be more clear about the differences, I think this is possibly the next step. But the way I see it is we talking about alliance, we talking about how they work together in this particular case, and I think that's what we should be focusing on. I'm not saying we shouldn't be talking about the differences at all. I'm just saying that this is probably not the place.
What if we kind of push the aspect of differences or dirty laundry down to the different working groups, so that the positioning relative to Cloud Native for Java is expressed from their own perspectives and what they contribute to it, as opposed to trying to combine it all in one single view.
Yeah, from my perspective,
Somebody has their mic open.
Yeah, let's see.
Majid.
There we go. Yeah,
Thank
muted.
you.
So yeah, from my perspective, to kind of move this forward, I'm okay with kind of the theme of sharing the similarities. I think the point's already been discussed that we'll have to continue via other, maybe not this deck, talk about the differences and the synergies, but we do need to clean up the Venn diagram slides and select the appropriate verbiage as it relates to the powerful combination. I think once we do those two things, personally I'm okay with kind of going ahead with the deck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's also just I've been waiting, but we don't have much time, so I'm going to not wait. There is one thing that we aren't really explicitly pointing out, and that is we say it in a very obtuse way about the similar processes, but the benefit of that idea is really the fact that Eclipse has evolved as an organization to be able to house these two working groups and produce clean IP. That's pretty important. That's pretty important to a lot of big enterprise customers that I talk to.
Yeah.
And we never call that out. And it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of an oblique mention that they use similar processes, right? But
let's add it, Don.
Agree.
Let's add it to the
a slide about that they both have. I've used the comparison before. It's probably terrible, but Eclipse is like the federal government, and each working group is like a state, and there's a whole, But anyway, we don't have to use that, but there is a whole cohesive IP system in play here, and we should highlight that.
Right. I mean, guys like Goldman Sachs are going to care about that.
Yeah. Dan, do you have are you possibly volunteering to create such a slide? I mean, I'm willing to do it, but I do not want to steal your thunder.
Oh, Will, I'll tell you what, I'll be glad to review your first pass and provide as much feedback as I possibly can.
I see. Will I get to retain the IP on the slide content that I provide?
You put whatever copyright you want, Will.
Okay.
So let's. This is fun. But Ryan, you're here, and you're like amazing in diagrams, and I'm not pushing you onto this. Would it be easier for us to own slides 9, 10, and 11 to create Venn diagrams? We need to adjust stuff, but once
can we click on those slides real quick?
Yeah, can we do that?
So I think we need to create 3 because one, we have so I like this. I like the API one. We can use that format or that style. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So that my suggestion about the Venn diagrams was based upon this slide. So I just want to make sure that that's acknowledged because I thought it was done pretty well. Anyway, we don't have to use that art, but I thought it was pretty good. Having having a similar slide with compatible implementations in a Venn diagram style, because we have a compatible implementations currently split. And by the way, can we just use implementations rather than just compatible implementations? Because we'll be able to use a stronger story. For example, like Tommy is one of the ones that supports both microprofile and Jakarta EE in the same box. So we're not exactly certified with Jakarta EE, but there's really no reason to be. Well, in my opinion, to.
I, from my perspective, the intent here was to promote, I think the Jakarta EE working group has, I don't want to exclude Tommy. The intent was to promote our compatible implementations. So.
Yeah. What I was imagining is to communicate to the industry, hey, look, there are already a bunch of implementations that support both in the same box. So, that would be the essence of the Venn diagram. That would be, here are a bunch of, here are all the implementations across both ecosystems and how they all fit together, right? Some of them are strategically microprofile only, like Quarkus and Helidon, and there's, light and just super small and all the positives of that. Here's a cluster of them that support both in the same box. That would include, of course, Open Liberty and Pyar and Wildfly and, I could say Tommy as well. And then here are some that are, just straight up Jakarta implementations, and that might be WebLogic, WebSphere.
I would consider it a requirement that Tommy be a Jakarta EE compatible implementation in order to be represented in that way in such a Venn diagram. And if it is not, I would not want to represent it as Jakarta EE compatible.
We have noise.
By the way, David, I'm not trying to be obnoxious, but it's just we are trying to promote that brand.
So Will. So how about?
So I apologize. I think Majid has his hand raised. He's using the Zoom.
I think you blocked him.
I muted them. I'll unmute him. Sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Majid.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Hola, Amelia.
Hola.
Some question about the slide 8, because CDI or JWT authentication in macroprofile slide. If the macroprofile or JW authentication is moved to Jakarta, is it possible, or it have we have a challenge to move the namespace or other things? What happens for the moving API in macroprofile to Jakarta?
Majid, that's a legitimate question, but that's what I would regard as a technical topic of discussion, and really a topic for a separate forum from this meeting, which is focused on marketing and messaging of what we have today. So David, I want to come back to what you were saying. Perhaps we can take that discussion offline. I think you've heard my point of view. Other members may have different points of view on it. But I think we can create a Venn diagram which includes microprofile and Jakarta EE. I'll just use the term implementations. So we certainly can create a slide. We can debate what implementations go in what parts of that Venn diagram. Is somebody taking? I am willing to take ownership of this slide and modify the APIs to use the Jakarta nomenclature. Does somebody want to take a shot at equivalent Venn diagrams for implementations?
My question, because the macro profile is depend on Jakarta Enterprise API. We
Some of
use
them,
some API, yes. If the microprofile grow up and cloud solution can use them, some APIs could change or move the API on microprofile to Jakarta Enterprise or no. There are different parts and microprofile API is always on the microprofile.
Majid, let me answer this. We have the CN4J forum. You must subscribe to it if you haven't done so, and send a question there, because as we will mention, this call is only for the current proposal and not technical.
Okay. And we've got to wrap because we're approaching the bottom of the hour.
It's a roadmap of the microprofile group.
Yeah, I think Majid, we need to come back to this deck, and we don't have time for a roadmap discussion at this time. I'm going to assume that the deck is largely, the structure is reasonable. I'm going to update this per Dan's suggestion. I'll try to figure out some way to reword this about spec process. I will create a spec process slide. I will update this slide. If somebody wants to volunteer to provide Venn diagram let me finish because we're trying to wrap up. Implementation slides, that's great. If somebody wants to take a shot at corporate supporters and a slide using Venn diagrams, that would be great also.
We can give those a shot.
Okay. I'm sorry, David, were you going to say something?
That was what I was going to say. We can give those a shot.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're just going to volunteer.
And I'm going to upload the video for this to microprofile. If there's an equivalent Jakarta site, I can post the video somewhere where someone can upload it to an equivalent like Jakarta site.
So John, I will send you via the minutes the Git issue where the area, the repo where you can submit the link to the issue, to the link to the video to the Jakarta site, and they can upload it and create their own CN4J videos. We do it in the micro class. I will help you on that. Don't worry. And I have a question. On Monday, we have a microprofile marketing call. We have those calls every 2 weeks, and we will be talking about this because we already started working on it last Monday, 2 Mondays ago. So if anyone wants to join today, and we like to join again, it's not that we will target 1 hour just on CN4J for this proposal, but this will be spoken, this will be worked, and you don't need to be in a call to get any work done, but it's nice to see the people behind us, to hear them, because an email and write-ups can be sometimes dry. So join if you want, check the calendar for microprofile. We're there, and usually some of us use the video or not. And we are not that bad, right?
All right, Will, closing comments?
Yeah, just John, did you take any notes during the course of this meeting?
I probably should have.
No, that's okay. I'll listen to the recording and create meeting minutes from this. I was unable to take notes during the discussion, so.
Me too.
Okay, all right. So we will send out meeting minutes. They will include some action items. I think we should think about whether this group wants to get together for one more call before we have a proposal that gets taken to the respective steering committees. So
I think that would be good.
Okay, all right. That's good feedback. Thank you all very much for joining, particularly those in Europe who are joining late in their day. Have a good evening or a good afternoon or a good morning, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.